When this half-breed rolled into the Dakota Digital R&D lab, it sported aging stock instrumentation with tiny aftermarket mechanical gauges mounted to a tattered and molested bezel. We wanted to keep better tabs on the 383 and bring the interior back up to original condition, so we ordered up a new bezel and grabbed a set of the new VHX analog instruments with silver alloy faces and blue LED backlighting. Moving to the inside of the car, first step is pull the stock gauges out, and that includes pulling the stock bezel off, and then you can get to the gauge cluster behind there. This particular car had some aftermarket mechanical gauges once in its life. We're going to replace this bezel with a new reproduction unit. Also, there are a few small little light bulbs on the back side to light up the original gauges. Those will not be reused for the VHX system, so definitely unplug those. One of the things I wanted to mention that might save you some headache while disassembling your dash is how the factory speedometer cable actually attaches to the factory gauge. There's a small clip on the bottom. Just go ahead and push that in, and that'll allow the cable to slip right off. You can't really see it while you're fumbling around in the dark. Now you know what you're working with. Now that we've got the stock cluster out of the bezel, we're ready to pull the stock gauges out of this housing. I've already removed the screws from around the outside, so we'll pull the clock cover off, and then gauge from each side. They just pull right off. And then ready to drop the Dakota Digital VHX system in place. You can see it mimics the look of the factory piece, and it just drops right on. No cutting, no trimming. Just sits right in place. Drop the tack side in. And then the clock goes right in the center. Alright, got the last screw tightened up. Got the Dakota Digital system installed in the back of the stock carrier. There's what we're looking at. You can see we've eliminated the stock gear indicator. We're going to use the Dakota Digital GSS 2000 electronic shift indicator. We've left the stock turn signal pieces in place because this system actually makes use of the stock turn signal locations. We'll include these two small jumper harnesses that'll plug right in. And then also in this step, we'll install the small jumper harness to go from the tack side over to the speed side. Just a Cat 5 connection here. And then you'll notice that there's no large bundle of wires going up to the instrument system. All we've got left to connect is one Cat 5 connection, and that will run down to our control box. And with that, we're ready to drop this in the car. One of the advantages to the Dakota Digital VHX instrument system is that the stock speedometer cable actually gets completely eliminated. And in its place, we'll install a little solid-state pulse generator. And that'll just thread right on, and it doesn't matter which gear you've got in the speedometer gear housing. As long as it turns, it'll spin the pulse generator. We'll just get this kind of hand tight, and then we'll give it a final snug with an 1 1/16 wrench, and then we'll plug in the supplied harness. The previous owner had installed a set of aftermarket mechanical gauges for the engine temperature and oil pressure. We've already moved the oil pressure feed line in the rear, and right now we'll just get the mechanical water temp sender out of the way. The Dakota Digital system includes solid state senders. Looks like there's a bushing here. Eliminate. Up here right by the thermostat and the intake manifold is very commonplace for the water temp sensor on a small block Chevy. The other common place is down in the head, actually, between the spark plugs. And we'll install the 1/2 inch pipe thread bushing. And then we'll drop the sender right in top there. And you notice there's no wire on here, but there's a supplied sender that just plugs into this weather pack connector. Snug that up here. And notice I didn't apply any thread sealant. You certainly can, because the solid state senders have the dedicated ground wire. However, oftentimes we find that we can get away without using any sort of thread sealant. We've got our sensors installed, and we've ended up with this bunch of wires here. We've got one for the speed, one for the oil pressure, water temp, and then a wire for the tack. We're going to take this bundle and feed it through an existing hole in the firewall back to the control box behind the dash. Well, we've got some of our sender wires connected, the oil, water, and speed senders that we put in the engine and the transmission. We've yet to connect any wires from the actual vehicle harness, so now would be the time to disconnect the battery if you haven't already done so. As with any automotive electronic project, you want to disconnect the battery to prevent any damage or injury to yourself. We've got all of our wire connections made at the control box. All the sensors are connected, as well as the signal indicators in the stock harness. One last thing to do is plug in the cluster with the supplied Cat5 networking cable and make sure everything lights up. And beautiful. Looks like we're off to a good start here. Now, last thing on the list to do is get this control box mounted behind the radio. Since its introduction in 1959, the El Camino has endured a lengthy identity crisis. Both car and truck, it's often shunned by both groups. But we open our hearts and our shop doors to this '69 Camino. The stout small block, overdrive, and 12-bolt won us over. This car is typical of a lot of street machines today in the fact that overall, it retains a lot of the original aura, with rally wheels, stock interior, and unmodified body, but also plays host to a number of performance-oriented mods. The stroker crank, Beef 700 R4, and gears coupled with the electric fuel pump, exhaust cutouts, and line lock all point to straight line performance. It's a happy medium in the battle between performance and originality. We've got the VHX system installed in the El Camino here. Everything lit up, looking real good. As with all Dakota Digital instrument systems, there are just two simple push buttons to access all of the features and to do all of the calibration setup. First we'll calibrate the fuel level sensor, and then we'll get it out on the road and calibrate the speedometer.